dealing with most international tourists that goes via Kruger Airport. You want to know again if there's a particular agreement in place. This, for me, it began to open up a lot of gaps that need to be closed without making any conclusion. I think we're just in the beginning of the meeting, but what has been highlighted so far is that there's so much gray areas that are not being dealt with, and the state then provide this service, right? Our interest, obviously, is public money. The APP of the Department of Home Affairs does not have a service at the Fireblade. In the APP is not there, right? So we may want, as we move forward, because it's a service that they are providing there. In the APP is not there. I'm not sure any other departments, again, that in their APP, do they have such, a target that they have with regard to providing a service to the Fireblade, So it's going to be around, the issues of the state having to spend money. The government is spending money in a private arrangement, right? So we'll have to deal with that particular area. That's why the point of accountability then comes in, right? We're not putting a blame on you, but we're looking at the role of government now in that level. Honorable Gumede, Mam Kenya will follow, Mam Nkomo, and then we'll say, you're not dealing Mam Raput. You'll be the last to speak after Finland. Honorable Gumede.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, it's just a follow-up on the question that has been asked as well about whether there are any other privately owned such facilities. And my question is, who are the other owners of these facilities, or are they solely owned by the Oppenheimers? That is my question.
Maybe that question, Honorable Gomed, again, it will want government to respond, especially, your Home Affairs and many other departments that we are dealing with a private company here. If they know how, they can tell us. It will be helping us, in fact. They can help us, Honorable Gomed. I think if you know of some of your friends who are in the same business as you may want to share with the committee so that we can know you are not reporting them to Parliament, but Parliament definitely we are going to make a follow-up on the issues that already have been highlighted, especially the issue of other private airports that are there, and the government does provide the service. We are going to make a follow-up. As long as it has to do with the immigration or Home Affairs, this portfolio committee is going to make a follow-up on those matters. Okay, thanks, Comrade Gumede. I think they will then respond if there's any knowledge of anyone who's doing the same. Mam King?
Thank you, Mr. I got only one question pertaining to the paragraph 2 from the bottom. Maybe it also relates to what Honorable Mkape has just said. Looking at these percentages, 5% you got as a family and 6% as a family. Do you think really you are really getting something from out of this by the mere fact of even going to the courts? Secondly, also, now I don't understand, may you please clarify to me what has been happening during, you said you opened the Fireblade open for business in 2014, but then what has been happening from 2014 to 2018? Now I don't understand what has been happening in between those areas, because really I don't know whether what is happening, because even now the numbers are going down. We're talking about 691 in 2018. What has been happening all along? Noting that there's also, we don't want to talk about this subject here as much as we are concerned, because that is a national key point. We are concerned about it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, ma'am. Mamongomo, can come in.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think my first statement, Chairperson, just before I ask one or two questions, is to thank the Chair for the welcome which he did the last time I came to the meeting. I didn't actually say anything about that. Thank you very much, Chair.
You're welcome.
Secondly, now coming to the input. You know, Chairperson, the Oppenheimer family is a family which all of us in the townships know about. We've known about them from the time we were little babies. Now I'm surprised that there's still agreements which are made where there isn't any documentation. Where actually you have said, I think you've recorded a lot of the stuff, we can always get that stuff. What type of operations are those? Even if you went to court and you won this case, you know, all that, but that's not how business is run. That's not how you do things. You know, where you can actually say, you know, we have recordings, you go all the way, you go for agreements, you sign up things, you do things. That's how things are done. And I must state that, like I said, some of us, I come from Soweto in Shawela, and I do frequent Limpopo and Zululand. I do know the projects which were done by the Oppenheimers over years. I do know them very well. And they've done things thoroughly. But there's something about this particular project.
Okay.
What's in it for the community and what's in it for the Oppenheimers? Okay. That is what Mkhalipi asked, Honorable Mkhalipi, earlier on. If the community involvement, as Kekana also said, Honorable Kekana said, if the community was involved, would we be seeing a lot of the dances that we had earlier here? You know, some of us have been ducking and diving even in the House, in Parliament. When there were fights some time back, I think some of you saw it on TV, we had to go underneath our cupboards and all that because we are tired of such type of performances. When is the community involved? Okay. When is the community informed about such type of ventures to actually avoid the type of issues which happened? I just need just community involvement. Okay. And then lastly, Chairperson, the issues on the charges. One member did ask about the charges. It is of interest that I link up the charges with the 3 areas which were covered in the media. I think that's when Mr. Oppenheimer was giving us the input. Remember when you said there are those 3 areas which the media has covered? Honorable Gumede actually asked and said, are the other places also partly owned by the Oppenheimers, the other places, because you said it's not privately, you know, owned. Secondly, the issue of uncontrollable, what is said here, uncontrollable flights. We have a problem in our country, in South Africa, where we have flights that are coming into our country which are not scheduled, where we can even get illegals coming in. We would like to know with surety that this will not happen. Lastly, the last question I would like to ask is that the third area out of the 3 issues that were covered by the media, it was that this facility is used exclusively by the Oppenheimer family. I think here we need to differentiate between business and family type of use, because if it's business, then it's actually used by everybody. But we need a bit of some clarity on those issues so that we know that this family, which is a South African family, which we know about, is actually operating within, is still operating within the laws and prescripts of our country. Okay. Like I said, we do know some of the projects you've done, and we are hoping that you are still keeping to everything as you were doing. Thank you.
It's an applaud at the same time that you are known, members is confirming that you are known to be doing thorough, good business. But with this one, it seems to be losing it. And your public relations does not deal with issues of perception. That your Department of Public Relations is a little bit weak, does not explain to the public on your day-to-day operations. Because the colleague puts it that you are a very big, well-known family. throughout your businesses. But when it comes to this one, it seems there are issues and you're not communicating proper. Hence, you saw some of the protests that you saw earlier. Maybe it's because of lack of information. You have to speak for yourself. But I think it's a good criticism that we have to note it yourself as we move forward. Let me give Honorable Hussein and then followed by Honorable Finland. I still want us to, as you respond, to really deal with your operations, the scheduling of your flights as they arrive, who does what at the point of arrival of a plane. That is very important. I think we must not miss that plane so that Parliament is satisfied that all these role players who are supposed to be playing their role when a flight has landed or is about to land or is still coming, the scheduling, which the colleague is now raising. How do you deal with such matters? I know they are very detailed. Maybe it may not be at your level, but if you have an operational manager there, you'll have to talk to us about such matters. Honorable Hussein.
Chair, thank you very much. With your permission, I would like to perhaps make a comment before I raise just 2 or 3 questions. And I simply want to say this, Chair. I think when I switched on the television a couple of days ago, I see our president hosting what I thought was a step in the right direction, and I'm referring to the investment summit. And I think if we want us as a country to be able to pull ourselves out of some of the situations, the difficult situations that we're in, as a government, as a parliament, we want to be able to show that we genuinely and positively want to encourage people to invest in our country. Whether it is local South Africans or international South Africans, but regardless of what we do, I think if we put that at the forefront of everything we do, to some degree, I think we'll be able to help to fix some of the problems that we have in our country in terms of unemployment and poverty and so on. But having said that, what we also don't want to see as a parliament, and I recognize this, the sensitivity that all of us have, is that no person, regardless of how wealthy they might be, may use that power, that money, and that influence to get any preferential treatment, given what is currently going on in the Gupta environment, if I can put it that way. Essentially, what I'm saying is that our sensitivity to this whole thing is to try and get some sense of comfort that the Oppenheimer family, who is very influential and in the country and wealthy for your own benefits, that you have not used that influence and that power much in the same way as the Gupta family have done. And I don't mean to draw the comparison, but I'm referring to the principle, and I'm not drawing the comparison. So on that point, I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Oppenheimer, what your thoughts are on that, and that you can give us as a parliament a sense of comfort that everything that you've done in terms of establishing Fireblade as a FBO has been done 100% above board, without any influence whatsoever on any government official or a politician. And perhaps that would give you an opportunity to be able to put our minds at ease that what you're doing is the right thing, and that Parliament and government can support you to do the right thing. The second thing I want to deal with, Chair, is having read all of the court judgments, and I'm not going to go into the detail, I think much of it is known to some of us. From what I pick up is at the center of the tussle between the Oppenheimer family of Fireblade and Minister Gigaba is the discussion of a meeting on the 28th of January 2016. So everything else is peripheral stuff, but the 28th of January is the center of the tussle. We know now that the court says that the minister had lied. And in fact, I'll deal with it later about some of the things that the court have said. In fact, I think the court ran out of adjectives to describe the manner in which the minister had lied. But having read your court papers, I don't feel a sense of comfort that you went into the actual detail of what transpired at that meeting. You've covered some of it. So if you don't mind to please share with us exactly what happened at that meeting with Minister Gigaba on the 28th of January, and what is it that made you feel that he had given you the approval to proceed. I see your letter 2 days later, Mr. Oppenheimer, that you wrote to Minister Gigaba thanking him for that meeting. But even in that letter, you don't refer to the actual details. The one detail which is of interest is that Minister Gigaba offered or suggested that the then President Jacob Zuma opened the facility. So if you could just go into that detail, because that will help us to give us a sense of whether or not there was a genuine interest from Minister Gigaba for this facility to proceed. Excuse me. Mr. Oppenheimer, there's a correspondence that Minister Gigaba had sent to you, and if you don't recall it, I understand you might not have it in front of you, but it's dated 27th of October 2016, and he's responding to a letter that you had sent to him. And I just want to read the part that he refers to. He says, "I have noted in one of your correspondence to myself dated 14th of October, you say that Denel's objection herein is spurious and baseless in the extreme, driven by sinister and ulterior motives." I'm not sure if you remember that correspondence, but you probably will, because I think it's a significant part, which brings me to the issue of Denel. I understand that at some point, although you had engaged and signed a lease agreement with Denel, for some strange reason, they later on withdrew the lease agreement. And if my understanding is correct. And you then decided to take that matter also to court. If you can maybe just give us an update of where is that court case with Denel, the first question related to Denel, and if you can expand on what those ulterior and sinister motives that you refer to in the correspondence, you don't give that detail.
Okay.
I think I'm done. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Chair.
We're not opening you back to the court again, right? But these are clarities that members of the committee may want, because these are open documents that are in the public domain, right? All the letters that Honorable Hussein make mention of are in the public domain. So you just feel free to deal with such matters. And then what we now know is that we are free to engage on this information that is before us, right? There's nothing much that is subdued, that they will be worried much that we don't have to say so, because the issue of granting is not being challenged, okay? It's on the basis of what we are saying under oath, and that's the information that we'll have to help members of the committee again to get the copy of that particular document on the appeal by the minister to the Constitutional Court. We'll have to get, I think it's a public document now. We must get that copy, because moving forward, we're still going to do further engagement around this particular area. Mr. Finland, you can come. I think you have noted more questions, right? You have noted questions.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Yes, yes.
I don't think I'm going to have lots of questions, but I've got an interest of finding.
Speak to the mic and then. Yeah.
I've got an interest of finding when you do business and you don't want to get profit. What was your aim? And secondly, in your business, do you have partnership with South Africans? The business people from South Africa, if you've got partnership with them. The last issue, Chair, I see that you started this negotiation in 2012 for this project. Then who was the minister at that time? Because I think Malusi Gigaba only started in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Minister Naledi Pandor was there at that time. How was the relationship with then that minister? And did she approve of this project? And why Minister Gigaba, in your opinion, why is he against Fireblade? Thank you, Chairperson.
All right. Mam Raputi. Thank you. But I think we're dealing with, all of you are South Africans, eh? They're all South Africans. Open as much as I know you. South African. The accent maybe the accent of the queen there, or the king somewhere in the Shangan land, whatever. but these are all South Africans. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. You'll explain yourself again because I see. I'll refer him directly. Comrade Man is here. Now, but I know that he's a businessman. He's no longer holding any public office anymore.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, maybe as we proceed further, we may want to hear how you structured yourself and all of that. The point I think that he was trying to put Finland directly will be around the issues of BE compliant again at the same time to make sure that those who are disadvantaged are able to be given an opportunity to run the Fireblade too. If it's honorable man, it's still honorable till today, by the way. It can't change. If honorable man is part of that, then we'll get to know. Mamra, put you on the floor. That will be the last question for now. Then we're going to allow your responses. And then Mam Kenya wants to make the last follow-up. We're going to allow you to make your responses again. Don't forget, they may be tempting. You're still under oath, right? Don't forget that part. But I don't want you to end up saying things that you're not supposed to say them. And tomorrow that can be used against you again. That's fine, Mama Raput.
Yeah. Ntate Nikki, Ntate Jonathan, Oppenheimer. I'm so pleased to be with you here today. As Mamu Koma have already said that you are really known family, I think from the Kimberley, where there is a tourist attraction, which some of us environmental activists, we say that it's not a tourist attraction. That hole is a hole of shame, especially when you see such poverty in South Africa. I was just wanted to ask what really motivated you to seek to have that Fireblade. I'm happy that I was not part of the delegation, by the way, but I said that I want to go and see what is happening there at OR Tambo. And I asked myself a lot of questions. You know, I didn't even go around. And I said that, but this Fireblade is just servicing one family only. And I don't think that is a mistake when we see these young people so frustrated coming and to scream. I form part of those young people that one family being serviced. Chairperson.
Yes, ma'am, you're on the floor.
Okay, because good really
I talked to the table to clarify certain matters because what we're dealing with, I think we have received the presentation and we are guided by the presentation that we have received.
But I want to say what was my observation there at OR Tambo of the Fireblade. And the question that came to me, I saw the state servicing the Oppenheimer family. Even if you have written some, you know, the statement here, there is no fairness. Even if there is a judgment that came, we should rule. We must also take a decision that Fireblade cannot service only one family. It is really not fair. It's painful. And if you can read, just go to a statement on paragraph 4. Paragraph 4, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That 150 million, is it yearly or is it monthly? And I think really, for a family as rich as yourself, even if it's 150 a month, it's not enough. But I just wanted to get clarity on that.
Okay.
Is there any fairness in that? But I think Ntate Nikki and Jonathan will answer us. I thank you.
Yeah, no, the points that you make, Mama, what is important is that we must go through the reports, colleagues. The committee has made reports of its finding in the Fireblade, and I think this is what must guide us. And at the same time, we have to be engaged with the statement that has been presented, so that we don't end up bringing things that are outside our scope of engagement and making insinuations of things that are not there. Let's try and stick to our points as we proceed. I think the whole, I know that you're from Kimberley too. You'll talk and tell us about the whole in Kimberley, please. Mamo Kenya?
Thank you, Chairperson. In that sense. I just want to add on my question the issue of when I look at the first on the two paragraphs on the first page of the statement. When I understand this engagement with the minister, only on the early part of 2016. But when you look down there, and then you say that we have been granted a final approval then on that day in the offices. But when you go down there, you talk about multiple engagements with the Home Affairs. As much as you said that your approval was not, the Home Affairs failed to honor the approval. But after that, there's a sense that talks to multiple engagements with Home Affairs that you resorted to go to the courts reluctantly. Now, may you please elaborate to us where are other engagements? Because according to this document, you have only one engagement with Honorable Minister, but you're talking about now multiple engagements that made you to resort to the courts. Just clarity on that, because you don't see those multiple engagements with Home Affairs in this document. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's get the responses then. We can proceed with responses. I don't know how you have structured who's going to answer which question.
Chairman, maybe I could start and then the others take over. And what I'd like to talk about, and it covers a number of the questions that have been raised here, is to go through my memory of what happened at the meeting with the Minister on the 28th of January. And that led to his granting us approval. As I say, that was a meeting that I was invited to by Minister Gugaba, and I was accompanied by Robbie Irons at the end of the table there, and another person who works with us called Bruce Tillum. It was an extremely cordial, friendly, and positive meeting taking place in the Home Affairs offices in Pretoria. And almost the first thing the Minister said was that he was delighted to be able to tell us that he had indeed granted his approval, and he had signed a letter to that effect, and that letter he would keep but would be delivered to us as soon as the necessary operating practices were agreed. And there was then some discussion between Robbie Irons and Jackie McKay of the Home Affairs about how long that would take, and the general feeling was that it would take about a week to approve those minutes. Following the meeting, as you rightly said, I wrote a letter to the Minister thanking him for this for this permission, for granting us this permission, and took him up on his suggestion that we should approach then President Zuma to formally open the facility. And he was also keen that at the time there was some idea of a VIP type of clearance for people, and the Minister was keen that this should be trialed at Fireblade as well for that process. You asked about minutes. We, on our side, did indeed produce minutes of the meeting, which we were sent to the Ministry of Home Affairs for their comments. They acknowledged receipt of those minutes and made no comments. Minister Gugaba, in the court case, tried to suggest that he had never received those minutes, but we were able to produce a message of acknowledgement of receiving of those minutes. Now, did they approve the minutes? No, they did not approve the minutes, but did they take up the opportunity to correct them or produce their own record of the meeting? Absolutely not. And what happened thereafter? Well, I'm not sure what happened thereafter, but the minister then changed his mind. Sorry, I should step back one. There was, following this meeting, then a series of engagements between Jackie McKay and other people in Home Affairs and Robbie Irons about formalizing the operating procedures. And everything that went there suggested that this, indeed, as the minister had said, was a done deal. But then, as the minister said, he, receiving a letter from Donnell, attempted to renege on his agreement. And this led in due course to the various court actions. And I must say, we were astounded in the court actions when the minister attempted to argue that he had never given permission. And as you heard in our short thing, and as you would see if you read the court judgments, all three courts also were astounded that he took this argument. And maybe here I should just raise one point, because which is important. I've taken an oath this morning to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and I'm standing by that agreement. The minister came and stood before you in May, took the same oath, I would imagine, and undertook to tell this committee the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And looking at the minutes, one of the things the minister said was that nobody can infer the approval on the basis of a leaked internal memo. Bribery must have taken place, as the only way the Oppenheimers could get an internal memo was through bribery. What the minister was referring to was a document where, in the minister's handwriting, in his own handwriting, is written, must inform, he actually says Anglo, but means Fireblade, that the approval I granted must be terminated. And MG signed against that. That document is part of the submission attached to the affidavits admitted by the minister himself. So the minister lied to this committee. And I actually take offense that he suggested we bribed somebody or stole a document. I find that very offensive, particularly as I am and he were under oath in this situation. And so we went to court. As you say, the courts gave their opinion. I think we would be only too happy to either produce for this committee a full record of all the court opinions, or provide you with a link to which way you could be able to access them, because they are in the public domain, available to anybody who wants to see them. And as you say, you studied them carefully and you have read the various things that the judges had to say. And I think that covers what happened actually at the meeting, and what led to Donnell changing its mind from being extraordinarily supportive when we started this process to suddenly becoming very difficult. I have no idea. But something happened, and I don't know what it was. Jonathan, do you or Manny?
Thank you.
I think my father has very accurately described the moment of the approval. It would seem to me, sir, Mr. Chairman, honourable members, that a brief reprise of the journey from 2012 to today is a very effective way of addressing many of the questions that have been asked. And before we even commenced the idea of Fireblade, and as my father said in his statement, we applied our minds to whether we thought this could be a successful business. And what you have to understand is Nikki and I, my father and I, are both very passionate South Africans and also very passionate about the aviation space. So when we looked at the business plan, it was not our intention to lose any money. It was our intention to make money, but not as in a business venture to buy a steelworks or a manufacturing plant and make T-shirts, which has its primary purpose to make money. Our purpose here was to enter into a business which made money, and I will come back to why it hasn't made money and why we say it's been loss-making. And it also implies our thinking from the very beginning. But we entered into a process to make money and to provide, very importantly, a gateway into South Africa and a service for South Africa, because we really do believe that South Africa needs to be able to market itself and sell itself in a very spectacular way. And in another part of our lives, we have a conservancy, a nature conservancy, which is considered one of the best here in South Africa. And certainly when we spoke to the guests who visited that, the idea of a high quality commercial gateway which addressed their needs was something that they seemed very attracted to. So there was purpose in this business. In 2012, we had, as a family, had a long relationship with Anglo-American, who had operated aircraft at OR Tambo for many years. And they were indicating that they intended to potentially close their businesses. So the home of our flying activities was going to go away. We thought that we could find new facilities, and we started that investigation. We spoke to all the stakeholders, including Naledi Pandor, who was Minister of Home Affairs at the time, and we discussed what we could have done. If this were exclusively for domestic use only, the design of the facilities would have been dramatically different. And during that process, starting in 2012 and running through to when we signed the lease agreement towards the end of 2013, so it was the better part of 12 to 15 months of discussions with various stakeholders, we talked about the need to have international movements, and we have also been very open in the business model of Fireblade is effectively a big petrol station. It might sound kind of crass, but the reality is the money that we make is from selling fuel. And the very sad thing is domestic flying doesn't use a lot of fuel. It uses smaller airplanes that bleed less fuel. International flying, bigger airplanes, more fuel. It's as simple as that. And so built into our business model from the very, very beginning was something like 30 to 50 international movements a month, escalating over time to a point where we could sell 1 million liters of fuel a month at Fireblade. As we sit today, Mr. Chairman, we're selling on average about 300,000 liters of fuel. So we have a shortfall of 700,000 liters. Many of those liters were intended to come from international travel. We then put forward to ourselves, we have a process whereby we look at these activities, to your point, to make money. And we produced a business plan which showed that over the life of the plan, and the life of the plan, the lease agreement that we entered into with Denel was for 10 years with a renewable right to a further 10 years, so for 20 years. We looked at an investment of just under 150 million rand, and we thought that we would make, if we were lucky, 15 to 20 million rand a year out of Fireblade, the facilities. So we would recoup our capital over 7 years, and we would make money for the ensuing years. That was the business plan. So there was real intent for a commercial enterprise. There were many, many discussions through this entire process. We had engaged with, I can't remember how many ministries, stakeholders and the likes, and to the point about agreements being written. Yes, in an ideal world, it is possible to write detailed agreements, but the world is not a constant and static place. It constantly changes, ma'am, I'm afraid. And so we had a constant dialogue with the people we were working with. We commenced construction in December of 2013. We built the new terminal. Many of you have seen that during the course of the first half of 2014. And we opened what we called a soft opening in August of 2014. And we had our hard opening for domestic flights only. And that's the important thing, for domestic flights only, in September of 2014. In so much as I flew internationally at that time, I left from the normal, the commercial side of OR Tambo. If I flew down here to Cape Town, I would have left from Fireblade. And that is how all international movements were handled until 2018, when we got the approval to have international movements. So there was a very clear process. Can I jump back to 2013? When we approved the business plan and approved the expenditure of 150 million rand to build the terminal, we had every expectation, because every single conversation we'd had with government departments, that immigration, customs and immigration, would be forthcoming shortly after our opening. And we had anticipated a 3-month delay in that process. And for 3 months, we could afford to carry the losses of only operating domestically. I think a proof point of that is that the international facilities at Fireblade, in their own sterile area, were designed and signed off and approved by all the various government stakeholders who use them. I think that's important. They were signed off and approved during the course of 2013, so that when they were built to their specifications. So there were officers that Port Health had signed off on. There were officers that Home Affairs had signed off on. There were officers of Revenue Services that had been signed off on. There had been officers for the police that had been signed off on. And, I mean, not in our business plan, and costing us about 2.5 million rand, was a sterile holding area, which we built in 2013, for those people that the South African authorities deemed inappropriate to come into the country, so that they could be held in what's called airside, in the aviation, on the international side of the airport, until they could be repatriated out of South Africa at our facilities. And those too were signed off by all the various authorities. So to your point about an expectation, everyone we had spoken to had said this is something we want. Everyone we had spoken to said this is great. Everyone had participated in the design. And so when we built the terminal in 2013, we really anticipated that we would open in 2014, we would run domestic operations, sort out all the niggles that would naturally happen when you start, and then international arrivals would occur sometime during 2014. And many times, and here Robbie was, Mr. Irons was really at the core of these conversations, we were promised next week, next month, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. And these conversations kept on happening, and we would come back to government and say to the various departments, what other things are now the issue? And we would discuss, we would resolve, and we would then go back and resolve, and we reinvested and reinvested. So a case in point, for those who visited the terminal, the international area has a quarantine zone between the outside entrance and the inside entrance. That was not originally there. There was a change in regulations, or a change in interpretation of regulations as personnel changed, and they said, no, we need this sterile zone so that people can't have a direct interaction with the international zone. And because we anticipated operations literally in the next couple of weeks, we moved the builders in and we built the sterile zone, and so on and so forth. And this really is something that happened ongoing through the period 2014 from our opening through to, at a level of frustration, the meeting with Minister Gagaba in January of 2016, where we finally had received the final approval and the minister said he'd signed the letter. So it was very easy from that point to say, okay, guys, let's go. And again, this, no, not just yet, we need to do some more work and everything else. And by the middle of the year, frankly, our patience after being in this process for 4 years was ultimately frustrated. In terms of the commercial nature of this,
That's fine. No, proceed.
in terms of, apologies, sir. In terms of the nature of this, it was never intended for Fireblade to be exclusively or even conceivably exclusively for the Oppenheimer family. It was intended to be a gateway for South Africa, to be a high quality, superior product as is offered pretty much elsewhere in the world. And we have globally about 10,000 other such facilities at international airports worldwide, and they all endeavor, I would like to think we offer a better one, but they all endeavor to offer similar sorts of services. And the numbers, for me, support that. So just in terms of clarity, in terms of the numbers, my father's statement states that since inception, including domestic and international operations, we have had some, let me try and find the number, 13,884 movements. The vast majority of those have been domestic movements, and those have, the family itself has been responsible for 5% of those movements. So by no means an exclusive use institution. 95% of movements through Fireblade have not been for the family. And then since we started international operations this year, we've had 691 movements, of which 6% have been family movements. So again, by no means exclusive use for the family. 94% of movements have been supporting tourism, business, non-state actors, state actors through the facility. And I think that really concludes that part. The one piece that I do think I need to mention is prior to Fireblade's inception, and it's not, aviation in this particular space is not a huge employer. We have endeavored to not only create a number of jobs, and at the moment Fireblade employs 52 people, many of whom we take the opportunity to extend training to, so not in the terminal space, but we have 2 young pilot candidates who are qualified as commercial pilots but are progressing towards becoming airline pilots who we support and fly for our organization. We continue to try and drive outreach programs using Fireblade as an opportunity to do business. We are trying to arrange a number of school trips to come and excite people about aviation. And as we are learning, and we just saw, for example, Comair withdrawing from the South African Airways technical agreement, there is a dearth of quality skills in our country. We're very lucky in that we've recruited and are able to retain, because they like the working environment, some exceptional engineering talent who look after our aeroplanes. And I would like to think that the reports that we get from our passengers passing through the facility, which rank it alongside the best in the world, is proof positive that the people who are providing that service enjoy their jobs, enjoy the work that they're doing, and really take enormous pride in both advertising South Africa and what it means to be part of the Oppenheimer family. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that addresses about 80% of the questions. There are a couple of more specific, smaller questions. But the one point that we haven't addressed yet is Manny. And I think, Manny, we've known each other, 20 plus years now? And you've been a business partner of ours in many ventures, and most particularly in this venture from prior to its inception. So, do you want to just mention something about that? Well, okay.
The chairman intervenes.
On record.
Sorry, just before Manny talks, and just to reinforce what Jonathan said, as I say, Manny's, I've known Manny from the days when he was a shop steward, when we weren't in partnership. But we have been in partnership for a long time. And when it came to find partners for this business, Manny was the absolutely right and logical person. And I have never viewed him as our BEA partner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'll just touch a few points, and noting the point we've raised, which the honorable members also want to touch on, Robbie. Robbie will deal with the scheduling. Okay. We want to assist this committee because you owe it to South Africans to clear all these matters which are all hanging around. And that's why we stand in front of you to tell you the truth and only the truth. In that regard, I want to say that I've been involved from the inception, the thinking, and so on. You all know that when I left this honorable house, I was a member of the National Assembly, serving the president by then as a parliamentary councillor. That's up to starting from 2014. Now, 2004, when I left 10 years as a premier, and I came to work here in Cape Town, and I actually also headed the ANC elections. But immediately after that, I realized the stamina is no more there. When I was running around Viva and Amandla, and I joined the place I come from. As I know the family when I was still an employee at DPS after finishing matric, 1980. I started to work for the company. His dad was still in charge of the family. When I became a premier, his dad was still the chairman, Harry Oppenheimer of DPS and Anglo-American, and we got above $1 billion in 3 months. $1 billion on a new project in pharmaceutical, 2 projects. And I'm just saying,
Not pharmaceuticals, health.
it's health. But I'm saying to you, is the reality, if we are going to do and join our president in terms of investments, I take it that we all have to do the right thing, as the president has said. We must thank those who are South Africans who still have confidence in this country. Whatever the difficulties and black t-shirts running up and down, we still have confidence. We'll move on to create because we know our people need it. But before I get into a political speech, I must come now to the real issues. To say that in my participation in this regard, I had to learn a lot about aviation, and I think that from the onset in 2012, the first minister we met is Naledi Pandor, and the DG for life there. And Fireblade had to go that route, even up to domestic, that you will get customs and immigration. That was a model because domestic alone were not going to make it profitable. That's why customs. And they said, build it, we are with you. They changed the specifications, extra money. They said, the health said, no, we want the Ebola scan, buy it. We had to buy it. The police said, we want a nice, comfy 5-star for the dog outside. Build a 5-star for the dog. Our dogs are 5-star people. We had to build all that. The other police came with big, nice thing for the guns and everything and so on. Other from correctional services, we need people who need to be held if they are not coming, and the police said, build a place where we can keep them up to the BOCC actually accepted. Everything is done, signed, and we all got into operational discussions and so on. So that's how we led, and that's why it was hurting at that time. That's why Nikki said, what do we do? I said, no, let's not proceed to fight with government. Let's go again and engage. We engaged with the minister, we engaged with his people, and from there on they ran away, and we had no other option. I want to say to you that indeed, there was a change in Dinel's leadership on a particular type of end of the year. In January, you must just check what happened on January, December 2015, and so change of leadership. Dinel being so supportive because they were landlord and so on, wanted revenue. We paid them nearly R1 million a month to keep that thing going and so on. The change of mind, no more engaging. There's something else at the minister level, we are afraid, and we accepted that. But I want to deal with the last important point on my side, because it's very important if we don't deal with it. Honourable members, we say the minister did approve in his own handwriting the affidavit, the things he said we stole or we bribed, and came in his affidavit in his own handwriting. That's what the court read from his affidavit. It was a hurting thing when I saw a comrade of mine going that route. Not only a comrade, when he has to come in here and still not stick to the truth, which the court has actually satisfied themselves in the high courts. If I stand here, I come from prison for 5 years. I know when I take that oath, it means real. You must not come and lie. And it's unfortunate. This matter continues. And I appeal to you, Chair, he needs to be assisted. To engage the minister To that extent, out of that meeting with the minister, it was that we are prepared to pay. Give us the charges. How much do you need? Because it's not in the budget now. MTM program, as you go for 3 years, we are prepared to sign on the dotted line to support a 3-year, to support that budget for the people who service us. And on that note, we got our chairman to write him a letter to say, we give undertaking to pay for those costs which are reasonable and so on for the type of minimum type of service, because it's not a daily type of movement. That's what happened. And on the basis of that, we removed the objection. And that's how the minister came back to say he now agrees. And that is all in the documents which we gave to court. So that matter was dealt with. The last matter, finally, is the mishap which happened at Fireblade, as we have raised. People who are here should be accredited by us. That's why they direct us to the security, which was in AXA already, which were permitted and accredited. That's how they got involved. So we are very clear in those operations, not our security coming from outside. It's all the police of South Africa is independent, and the AXA security on the premises is from the ones we took. And when a particular plane came and people were having to get to leave from Fireblade Airport, they come with their things and they were going through the security. And when they were going through the security, the beams went up, cling, 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 cling. The box could not finish to pass. And so chaps, security said, you open what is here because it's not allowed. That's aviation laws. These are the rules. You open, want to see what is it, and so on. And that's what is expected from you. Cause they stood outside, cause refused to open, took the box away, and ran out with it. The plane had to leave without them. They could leave with that cap again from there straight to Russia. And that's why you could see wonderful soccer. Without that, it could have disappeared in the Ikululeni area. The people are very difficult here. But we support the business part of it. I want to thank you, Chair, and I think that Robbie will do the final thing just to give you.
Okay. Now, the point that you dealt with, the security point and the attempt to smuggle things out, yes, you have spoken general. You do not want to be specific, because I hear you saying that we wrote to the company. Could you just share with us, in brief and passage, which company was that?
Chairman, with your permission, it was an entity belonging to the Guptas.
Okay, no, thank you.
It was their plane.
Okay, thank you very much. You see, it was publicly reported, that one. No, that's fine. Thank you very much. And that's why the point we are making is that we may not even want to begin to compare. Here we're dealing with a company. We've invited them. They've responded. They're here. Let's just deal with them only and don't bring other people. But it was important just for that clarity. Can we proceed with responses, please? We're not done yet.
Mr. The mining industry, other than through sort of small shares that are in other things in 2012. So we exited the mining business in 2012.
Well, what we're dealing with today, we are dealing with the company. Is that the company called the Fireblade?
Okay, I won't go
I'm just saying that even ourselves, let's try and avoid the family issue, because we are dealing with a company called Fireblade.
Thank you,
right?
sir.
And that company has directors.
Correct.
And before us today, we have these directors before us today.
Correct. Thank you.
Right? Okay. Thank you.
I think Robbie can talk to the procedures of moving aeroplanes. Uncontrolled flights into Fireblade. I think, Robbie, do you want to have another go at that?
Maybe as you do that, Robbie, there's a point that Mr. Dipiko has raised, the issue of payment. Meaning that when I talk state, I talk government departments. And then different government departments, in fact, they perform services at the Fireblade. Health, agriculture, home affairs, SARS and all of that, right? Now, what is it that we are paying for? Maybe you want to talk to us about that arrangement for making payment for 3 years. And then what is going to happen after 3 years? Is it covered in the agreement that after 3 years, this is what will then happen. But in principle, I think we have noted that there are other service providers of your nature who are more privately, like your Lanceria and your Kruger, whom we don't know if they are paying any service currently to the state, and they are provided by the state, by the way, the state does provide services to them of immigration deeper into this particular arrangement. Again, as you engage with us, have you come across any legislative framework in your area of operation? I would know that you do have quite a number of capacity when it comes to legal capacity. Have you come across any legislation other than the immigration law that in fact gives rise to the Road of Home Affairs in that arrangement? Have you come across anything? Because part of the exercise that we're engaging in is to again identify any gaps in the law, because these are private arrangements that are there and the state does provide the service. You will definitely want to have some kind of a legislative framework in place, a policy framework in place that guides us, because you have a gentleman's agreement here, and it's not even driven from the level of legislation or policy of government, right? So we want to, that's why further engagement with the one that the state provides the service for, the state will have to account for. Those immigration officers that goes and provide a service there must be accountability. If it happens that one of them died on the way, or when is there is shot at, or whatever that happened, the state takes the responsibility, right? So the state pays the salary of this person every month to provide the service, okay? So these are some of the gaps that as we move forward, we are afraid to really identify them, highlight them, help the Parliament Committee to really look and try and address some of the gaps that you yourself will have identified, okay? And here we are dealing with South Africans here. I'm not dealing with the people whom, when we wanted them to appear, some of them wanted us to book them business class ticket and get them interpreters, Hindu interpreters, at the cost of the public, when they've made so much money out of the public purse, fraudulently so. So these are some of the things that, as we deal with these matters, we must and we have noted that point, we want to get those who are responsible to give us a report on such matters. Okay, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of, you've somewhat distracted me.
Oh, well, the chair is the right. The chair is the right to do that. It's up to you to compose yourself and come back again.
Another question that was asked was, do we have interest in any other aviation businesses in South Africa? And the answer to that is no. Fireblade is two parts. Fireblade, in the first part, is the terminal business, which you saw the facilities themselves. We also have an aviation business, which is available for third-party charters. So it supports anyone who would like to charter it directly or indirectly. So we don't have any further interest. In terms of these privately owned, and that is in line with the agreement that we entered into to effectively provide budgetary support for the 3 years while these issues were worked through.
Is that agreement separate from the one that, is this a separate agreement?
It's
or is still the same agreement that is not signed?
Chair, if I may interject here.
That's fine.
The MOU, which has been developed by the DG of Home Affairs and his new appointed BMA structure, were correct. So if I can just take a step back, the BCOCC used to be the Border Coordinating Committee that regulated all border movements within South Africa. Whether it be land, sea, or air, they would have total oversight of operationally.
The new bill that came in fact, they're still not yet even, it's still in the second house of Parliament. It's not yet even adopted by the NCOP. So we still have to sit with whatever arrangement that is there for now, which the department, in line of failure to adopt the new amendment, the new regime, it means that there must be clear clarity on who's in charge there, right? But that's our business, obviously.
Sure.
But it becomes a business too, because at the level of the port of entry, we expect that coordinating. Hence, we're listing the number of departments that are involved with you there. But what is interesting for us is to understand the level of the people that serve in the BSOCC. You may find that that's just an ordinary manager at the airport there having to take decisions that impact nationally, right? Right.
In terms of, in an attempt to answer your question, in terms of the starting to operate the facility, we met each of the requirements of the BCOCC operationally. Aviation is highly regulated. You cannot blink, you cannot move, you cannot do anything without an approval in place. You cannot pump fuel without someone who's a designated person to put fuel into an aeroplane. He also, from a fuel perspective, cannot put fuel into an aircraft with the crew being available at the aircraft. Highly regulated without the crew. So just going on to the point where there's a perception that certain movements are taking place at our discretion, it's baseless. It's absolutely not possible to conduct any movement from Fireblade, domestically or internationally, agreed by all the relevant stakeholders and was submitted on the 4th of April 2018 to the Ministry of Home Affairs for their final perusal, approval, and to this date we still wait for that.
Version 1.
Be on record. I want you on record. Yes. Please.
Version 1
Yes.
of that agreement was agreed at the BCOCC in 2015.
Okay.
It wasn't signed, it was agreed.
It was agreed, not signed. Okay, which parties have signed that one? Parties that have signed, yourself, you have not put your signature on any document.
It was a meeting, I mean, you were at that meeting, Robbie. It's better that you actually speak first. But
Chair. Okay.
No, that's fine. Let's proceed. That's fine. Please feel free to speak because I've allowed 4 of you to speak. I don't have a problem as long as it's going to be on record. As long as you can press the mic and be on record, I'll be happy. Because we want to get every single legal thing that you want to share. You are free to talk to us.
Mr. Chairman, in 2015, during this journey while we were waiting for international movements, as part of the agreements, as I described to you, this constant, we're getting it tomorrow, the BCOCC, of which we had status as an observer, discussed the standard operating procedures of Fireblade and agreed them with all the actors. There was no document to sign. It was the agreement of the BCOCC.
Okay.
That agreement was subsequently updated after the court judgments.
SARS were involved. Every applicable entity.
No, that's fine. I wanted specifically to get Home Affairs as the coordinating department. I wanted to know who is in charge there, the person that you are liaising with all of these processes. From January to today, when was the court judgment delivered? Was it January?
Chair, it was January.
January. Today it's, is it October now? It's almost November now.
Yeah.
January to November, today there's no signed document. And I'm not putting a blame on you, those who are responsible to sign the document, right? Let's proceed then with the operational matters that we did receive a brief, by the way, right? With when the plane lands, what happened, at what point do you notify the relevant departments, 24 hours. And I just want you to capture it for us for record purposes, right? We did receive that information at the level of your people that we met at the airport. For now, what is important is just to get you, and I accept the statement that you have made. We are very detailed. We want, when we say bring the documents, we want documents, right? Okay? That's what must happen next time. So that you don't treat you like it's a preferential treatment again that we get from Parliament that we can't even call for documents. When everybody that appears here submit documents, okay? There's no preferential treatment here. So we're going to agree on the date, the time that we're going to expect a list of documents that we're going to ask you. So we'll outline those documents as we close the meeting later, okay? And those documents will have to be delivered in time. If you have to fly a private jet to bring them here, that would be lovely. Okay, thank you very much. Let's proceed.
Well noted, Chair. And for the record, we will make sure that the relevant documentation is available.
That's fine.
In terms of the approvals granted, I'm going to go through all of them in detail because they're very pertinent to your assessment and your scrutiny process. Initial engagement, Chair, just to confirm, you don't want the list of approvals?
We want
No.
submitted, but not.
Okay. I'm going to talk you through this very chronologically. Per agreement with AXA, Airports Company of South Africa, only non-scheduled private or corporate flights are allowed to operate through the Fireblade facility. Now, the differential between non-scheduled and scheduled are commercial airliners. Non-scheduled are general aviation private aircraft. The Fireblade Aviation operations team will play the nodal role in setting up customer requests to use the FBO for international arrivals and departures. The Fireblade operations team receives handling requests for OR Tambo from private operators around the world. A high degree of losing your operating license. Typically, customers wanting services for international arriving and departing visiting flights to OR Tambo International Airport, the Fireblade terminal, would need to provide the same information required by all role players in the BMA/BCOCC to enable Fireblade to apply for the mandated. Each international flight would need Fireblade to apply or provide the information for applying for a South African landing clearance, applying and setting up the arrival and departure slots and filing of flight plans, advising the AMC, which is the Airport Management Center. It's a division of AXA that controls and have been taken care of at the OR Tambo main terminal. Setting up of crew rest services, which include hotel bookings and crew travel arrangements to and from the hotel. Settling of any and more often all fees on behalf of each customer for rebill at a later stage. Each international visiting aircraft must have a landing permission mandated and issued by the Ministry of Transport. On this application, each operator is required to advise the purpose of the trip, as well as the basics, such as the operator name, aircraft details, passenger details, and intended route. Fireblade Operations does assist operators with this process, but some operators apply at airfield. This means that all movements into and out of the airport and its airspace are controlled through allocated timings applied for with CAMU, which is abbreviation for the Central Airspace Management Unit, which is a division of ATNS, Air Traffic and Navigation Systems. These timings are called slots. By doing this, the airfield can track the movements not only for arrival and departure times, but by collaborations with AXA, Airports Company of South Africa, accounts to ensure appropriate fees are charged to the parties applying for the slots. Fireblade Aviation does apply to CAMU for internationals arriving and departing slots on behalf of the operators. Included in these applications are the flight origin and destination. Once the application has been approved with the allocated time slot, the operator customer is advised by email formally. The same plan for filing or flight plans, which is a requirement. Flight plans are filed through the OR Tambo International Briefing Office. Apart from the basic safety equipment, persons on board, the route and timings the aircraft wishes to operate within, the flight plan also indicates the operator details. Fireblade either assists with filing the flight plan or contacts the briefing office to confirm that they have the flight plan in the system. A flight reference number is issued, in fact always issued, by the OR Tambo International Briefing Office to confirm the said flight plan. The confirmation of this is sent to Fireblade to the customer. The AMC and Denel operations team are advised of each intended movement to ensure traffic flow is managed accordingly. The notification is also a prerequisite to ensure the echo gates, which is operated by AXA and Denel, will be opened on times as access to Denel is restricted to notified movements only. Bearing in mind the echo gates are two independently controlled gates. One is controlled by Denel and one is controlled by AXA operations. The AMC and Denel operations teams are advised of each intended movement to ensure traffic flow is managed appropriately. The notification is also a prerequisite, which I've just touched on, forgive me. The process below outline the procedures to be followed. Fireblade operations must, as a prerequisite, give the BMA stroke BCOCC role players and operational decision makers 24 hours notice of each international arrival or departure, unless approval has been obtained for an ad hoc short notice flight in advance. This will allow sufficient time for departments to screen the passenger lists and do the security checks required. Notice will be provided by means of email to the mailing provided by the BMA stroke BCOCC. Additional movement updates will be sent via text to the designated persons on duty to update arrival and departure times. The BMA role players will require the following information for each flight, and this is quite critical for safety and security purposes, particularly from a BMA BCOCC control perspective. Aircraft registration and call sign, aircraft type, year of manufacture and serial number, point of origin and departure destination, expected time of arrival or departure at OR Tambo International Airport, expected numbers of crew and passengers, passenger and crew names as per passport, passport numbers and licenses on general declaration, which we refer to as a GenDec, a cargo manifest, if applicable, applicable health questionnaires as per Department of Health requirements. So should an aircraft be coming in from any particular territory that's a high risk zone in Africa or any other parts of the world, it has to be decontaminated and sprayed accordingly. Anticipated rifle or bodyguard movements will need to be declared to the SAPS or OR Tambo International movements. What we do find, and this is very important to note, is that with high profile people traveling around the world and coming out to South Africa for hunting trips, there could be hunting rifles or security guards that carry weapons. SAPS and State Security Agency need to be notified in advance.
On that point, do you do that? Do you notify them in time? Because this point came up.
This is 24 hours prior.
This point came up during our visit.
Yeah, Chair,
right?
I can confirm.
And my point,
Yeah.
the point I was making earlier was that the level and the capacity of the police to respond on such issues, right? And fairly so, you must be able to guide us again.
Yeah.
If you yourself have identified weaknesses, please raise those issues to say, but this is what we find. You know, somehow police are not yet properly able to share with us. Or privately, you can write to us and say, we believe that these are the following gaps that need to be closed because we have experienced such issues. For example, the point that Mr. Mann is making of the box that came from the Gupta flight, right? And that has been a very good thing to have been done rather than just allowing it to pass. After a few telephone calls, they have to shift. Some without fear or favor, okay? So thank you very much on that list. No, I'm not losing the meeting. No. I always motivate the engagement so that people who are before the committee must feel free to engage with us. Okay, let's proceed, and then we're still going to take the, how much time do we have? We're still going to take the last round. I think we'll allow just one or two comments from members as we begin the process of wrapping up. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. If I may just continue to elaborate further on how the movements are processed. Only once the BMA stroke role players have approved the pre-clearance information will the flight be given permission to use the Fireblade FBO terminal. Fireblade will provide transport to the BMA stroke BCOCC role players as agreed in the SOP and collect them from the OR Tambo main terminal landside to Fireblade FBO and return them to the main terminal post the flight. All officials should be at the Fireblade terminal 2 hours prior to each international flight arrival or departure to ensure the necessary checks are ready, levels have been actioned. Each stakeholder will man their station or office in the international arrivals or departure terminal, to which Fireblade staff will have no domain during any movements taking place. So much so that Fireblade does not have access to those facilities without a state authority authorizing them to get access to those zones and being in their presence.
Okay. So that's now the point that we're making across the service that the state provides. They get notified, they then move into the space.
Correct.
They come there, they drive around, they come there, then they perform what they must perform, and then for free, and then they go back again.
Yeah. And in addition to that, Chair, if I can just comment, at all times, whilst the sterile zone is unmanned, no Fireblade personnel member will have access to that zone.
Okay.
For security reasons.
Okay. Okay, no, thank you. Let me give Mam Kalipi, Honorable Hussein. We're now working on wrapping up. Are we satisfied with the responses so far? Members who have asked questions, are we? Okay, no, it's fine. I'll give it to make a follow-up. I just wanted to check if there's more hands. Mam Kalipi, you're on the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. No, you correctly. When we were there, unfortunately, you were not there to receive us on the day, on the 31st of August. But we were with the department, the acting DG, and we raised this this concern of coordination of operations. We were not happy as a committee. That 24 hours notice, so it's having some concerns as members to say that the department, especially the department who must guide our interest as the country, need to be notified by you who's operating there. So what if you decided not to notify them in 24 hours? That is
No, just note it. Just note it.
Relax, Chief, relax. We gave you a chance as well. So, but I don't think it's for them to answer that, Chair. Because Tina, we are doing our oversight as the committee, but we are just telling you what we went through during that meeting to say that there is something that needs to be fixed here. That's one. And Chair will concur with me. All along, the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs have been told that
30 minutes to get there.
as people who are supposed to do the oversight, and we were shocked to learn that no, we're not going inside our Tambo. That is our main concern as well. But we'll address that with the department as well, because that's where the buck stops. I was listening to you, all of you, when you were responding to our question. And then what I pick it up is that now you have a faith in a new president. After that announcement on investment that he said, I think it has been a week or so. And then you even commented that you are committing yourself in 2 projects. My question then, have you met the new president? Have you discussed the new president regarding this project, where the minister have changed the heart? That's one. The second question is that, have you met with the new current Minister of Finance, as former Premier of Northern Cape said that it was Minister Nhlanhla who was the finance minister when all these projects were trying to put together. So now there's a new minister. So those arrangements with the chair called gentleman agreement. So have you also appraised him with the new development regarding this project? So now I just want to get, because I wanted to, on my first question, I thought you were going to respond to say, because I was listening to Jonathan trying to justify why you want to push ahead with a non-profit project. And then you even said to you are losing. You were estimating that you are going to make money, but so far we are losing. So why are you pushing with this thing while you are losing? That is the main question. So maybe you must convince us. You intended to make profit, but the project went wrong. But you still want to go ahead with the project. And then I ask you a question that in some parts of the world, we do have such facilities, especially in mining, in farms, whereby other things are happening that are not supposed to be happening. So the question to you, Mr. Nick, is any of your companies in South Africa involved in aggressive tax avoidance or in profit shifting? Please answer very, very honestly, because we need to know exactly what are we dealing with.
We not forget that we must stick to the Fireblade too, but members have a right again to raise some of the concerns. As long as we are able to respond to them, that will be okay. But members too, again, let's stick to the Fireblade arrangement.
And then the Fireblade, Jonathan, you told us that so far we have 52 staff members. Can you also just break it down in terms of demographics and gender in order to be with you, to know what is happening. Are we getting there as a country since there's an unemployment rate in South Africa? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Maybe you may want to send out, if you are not able to give the last one, you may want to send out just a breakdown of the staff complement in your area of operation.
Chairman, can I just deal with
no.
Because it'll take a second.
No. Okay, that's fine. Let me give you, but Wasen will come after. Mam Damuza will close it. Mam Damuza will be there. Mam Nkomo now if it's so weird. Okay, no. I'm now going to be giving members, each I'm going to give you 2 minutes just to finalize the wrap-up questions, okay? Because we need to close at some point. I think we got the point that we wanted. I think we managed to break through and get what we wanted out of this engagement. But nonetheless, I'm not closing the meeting now. Colleagues still have questions. You want to respond, Nick? You want to respond?
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. No, tax avoidance, no.
Okay. Okay, no, that's fine.
And just to say, too, that while I have met President Ramaphosa in the past, before he became president, I should think I met him last 2 years ago, I would think. And Minister Mboweni, I haven't shaken hands with for many years.
Please note that you are even meeting the Committee of Parliament. Please, we are very important people too. Okay? Meeting the Committee of Parliament too. Okay.
On the first question, what happens if no 24-hour notice is given? The aircraft will not enter South African airspace, or will not taxi out from Fireblade. Can't be done.
Okay. All right, Hossein?
I just want to probe this thing about this elusive box that you referred to.
No, please, yes, you're right. Let's proceed.
Something just doesn't make sense to me. If I attempt to try to take any box of whatever nature through OR Tambo International Airport, somebody will have to come and bail me out. But from what I understand, what you've said is that there was an attempt to take some box. Nobody knows what was in the box. And was there an attempt to bring it into the country or take it out of the country? And so they were prevented from doing so, but then they take the box and put it back in the car and disappear. Now, therein lies my concern. Now, how is it that that there was no form of security or police who decided to ask, open this box and tell us what's in there? And you just allow people to just simply walk away, whether it's the Gupta family or whoever. But there was no further probe of it, and it just ended there. That surely can't be right.
That is why the point Honorable was saying is the capacity of the police that meant that particular cause of entry, right? And I think in your scanner report, it will detail what was the content of the box. It does not tell you. If it flags, it tells you something. There are two things that it will tell you. It will tell you either it's diamonds or it's drugs. It does not tell you. Or it's money. Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, firstly, this was before we had international status, so we had no international movements.
Okay.
Secondly, our rights as a private company were to not allow the transition from groundside to airside as per our agreements with AXA in terms of providing airside security. At no point were we able to look inside the suitcase, and as a consequence, the owners of the suitcase agreed, somewhat reluctantly initially, to take the suitcase and take it off the premises. We had no right to take it. We have no authority in terms of the security we provide other than to prevent goods moving from groundside to airside.
Okay.
Just to say,
allow them to speak. I will not take you. Just note it.
Yeah,
let's hear more.
Chair, I'm concerned that we lose the thread of it.
No. I want you to hold on. Let them speak on this thing because you've raised a point. Allow them to speak on it. You'll come back.
Sure. Sorry, just to stress, as Jonathan said, this was pre-international movements through Fireblade. So there were no police on site. This was only a terminal used for domestic flights. And as Jonathan said, our sole right was to prevent goods moving from landside to airside. And when they refused to opened the suitcase, and as you rightly say, we don't know what was in it. It was just something that raised the suspicion of the X-ray operator. All we could do was say, we are not prepared to allow this particular piece of luggage to go from landside to airside. In a similar circumstances today, with international movements taking place and police on site, the situation would be very different.
Who is they that you refer to? May I just ask?
Sorry?
You say they took it back. Who's the they? I mean, who's the person who attempted to take the suitcase through the...
The company that was being supported.
Switch off your mic when they are on the floor so that we are able to hear everybody.
The company that the luggage was going to was a Gupta controlled company, and it was a Gupta controlled aeroplane. And I don't know who the individuals were, but clearly they were people either directed by or in the employ of that company.
Okay. Okay. And then the matter was then reported to the to the police or to who? As required by law. What then happened?
Chair, it was reported by a Director of Flight Operations and Security to the relevant authorities at OR Tambo.
Who's the relevant authority at OR Tambo?
It would be the BCOCC members and State Security.
Okay. So there's a report for that. There's a report for that. Okay. That's fine, because we have noted it and we then said that we may want to make a follow-up to such matters. It does concern us, especially being the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs in charge of ports of entry, right? The BCOCC is under the command and control of Home Affairs generally. So if such things happen and Home Affairs is unable to deal with such matters and follow up and investigate and arrest those criminals who are trying to smuggle whatever that they were trying to smuggle out of the country. So on that note, Mamu Gomo, you'll close now. You'll close, Mamu. What you call it? Dambuza. You'll close. Mamu Gumed. Mamu Gomo. Hey, yeah, it's not. I know that you're from Soweto, so you like the space called the Oppenheimer in Soweto.
Oh yes, I do.
Okay, proceed.
Like I stated, Chairperson, I know them very well. Chairperson, the first issue which I would like to ask about, it would be the issue of benchmarking. Because I think I heard Jonathan when we were talking and we were saying, Fireblade is one of the best things, you know, we've got so many in the world and all that. If you were to benchmark, say out of 10 of the best, where are we? Secondly, Chairperson, I'm not sure if that question was answered when I had gone out. It's the question of community involvement. Remember, I asked about that. And I said that, you know, some of us have been under cupboards and under chairs and under everything. And what happened here earlier could be a manifestation of not involving the community in these ventures. And like I said, I know a lot of your projects and how communities were involved. But with this one, it seems as if you were just talking to Department of Home Affairs, Department of Transport, Department of whatever, but the communities, how are they also involved in that? Thank you.
Tell the community that they were starting a business now, Fireblade community camp. But that's the point. The point obvious is that, you know, when you are in that particular space having these experiences, you want to really communicate open of the business that you do. That's why the point I was making earlier was that maybe your communication and media unit will have jacked up somehow again. Just to communicate proper, to say, you know, this thing has been in the rounds for quite some time, and the impression is now given that there's some fraudulent things that have happened there, you know, and you're supposed to be responding. Having you, Mr. Mani, who knows public perception generally, you'll have made sure that, you know, you're able to take the community and South Africans in general, you know, and the international people that use your facility must be clear and happy that this thing is not under any scrutiny and all of that. You know, it does, in fact, speaks to business values and really creates good opportunities for you to get more aircraft landing here. This is what we want to see moving forward, generally. Okay, Mamu, you'll speak as a comment at the end as we close. Mamu Dambuza?
No, Chair,
That
I
is the
think-
last point now
yeah.
that we are getting into.
I think my question has been responded to, the first one of security. But in terms of a user fee principle, for other departments, because I know they do pay fees for the use of the Department of Home Affairs staff members, but in terms of the other department, and I wanted the clarity from what the
The agreement.
yes, in that medium term.
Yes.
Yes, yes. I wanted to know, does it relate to all the personnel, government personnel that are being operating there for Fireblade, or it was just specifically for Home Affairs? Thank you.
Maybe as you do that, this will have to be reflected somehow in some agreement that we've entered on the payment of the 117,000, meaning that someone will have made a calculation of the service that is being provided will worth so much from government point of view. That's why you are expected to pay 170, is that per month? 110,000 per month. Now, I don't want to dwell much about the issue of your lease, because your lease is not with Home Affairs generally, it's with a flight is delayed, some mini hotel there, on top there. All of those things are the infrastructure that you have put with 150 million investment that you have put into that thing. After 10 years, what then happened to those things? You may, at the end, want to talk to us, but in passing over, because this, for me, there's further engagement that is still required with the department now, and departments, by the way, that are involved in providing that service. So before you respond, let me give Mayor Raputi still has a hand up. Mam Raputi, I think, Honorable Mr. Mani, earlier when I was correctly said you must talk about the Kimberley. There's a point that Mayor Raputi raised about the Kimberley hold. And how do you associate yourself with the Kimberley hold? Maybe I thought because you're from Kimberley, you'll be able to respond to that. But again, generally, the point that you raised around the issue of the usage of the family, I think that has been clarified, that 90% of the facilities utilized by public, it's only a small percentage from 6% at some point to 5% out of the 13,000 people that have passed through the process. I think that has been clarified under oath. Mama Raput, you can still come in. I want us to wrap up. Mama Raput, you're on the floor.
Yeah, Ntatenike. I'm just, reflecting when we visited that area, that Fireblade. I saw most of the government, some of the people were government employees. And I'm just asking myself, the job opportunities in that area, if they were if there were government employees there, how are you envisaging creating job opportunities for youth in that Fireblade? Because I saw government employees being the one that are servicing you. And it's still a big question whether the chairperson, whether the ruling from the court, but it favored you. But I'm still saying that, is it fair? And Tate Mani, you were a shop steward. And that hole in Kimberley, a tourist attraction that was created by our Nikki Ntate Miki and Tate Jonathan. On environmental impact issue, what do you say? I don't think that is a environmental attraction. Ntate, because this is the chance of the Oppenheimers. Because we are not saving.
Normally I avoid.
Yeah, but I just wanted to check about that.
No. Normally, I allow every member to raise any question.
No, it was not answered. No, it was not answered.
No, I'm chairing this meeting now. I always allow members to raise, and I don't even interfere when members ask questions. And members must be relevant to the issues that we're dealing with. On a serious note, the issue of disaster of the Kimberley Hole to be answered today in this meeting with dealing with Fireblade does not arise. I mean, please, let's just give the parliament status that it deserves and engage with people according to what we wanted them to respond on and all of that. And I think the whip of the party too, when we deal with such matters, please let's guide each other and help one another so that we're not able, we don't end up being, as if we don't know what is it that we want to achieve out of this engagement here. On that note, I want to suppress.
It will be answered.
No,
you said that it will be answered, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay, when we'll talk about the Kimberley Hole, then I'll allow you to talk about the Kimberley Hole. I will come on Tambuza.
Chair, I want to respect you. I want to respect my honorable member there. I come with her for a long time. But I think that the agenda guides us, all of us. I've been the chair of this organization for many years in the Northern Cape, chair of that province for 14 years. I want to assist. If you want to speak about all other matters, even in the Northern Cape, I'm available. Not in this type of, because here the agenda is Fireblade per se. Very important matters we're dealing with. About the big hole and what has happened to the diamonds there and so on. I'm ready and availing myself to Mama to talk to. If she wants to call me in another meeting or another committee, I'll be doing that. But thank you very much, Mama. I'm available to do that to you. Thanks.
I want Mom Tambuza to close this thing, but let me give you David. Okay, Mamo, okay? Yes, Mama. That's the last question. Hossein, when you start to scratch your head, I know you're not satisfied.
I wanted to make a point of procedure.
I still have 5 minutes. I have 5 minutes to give members. 5 minutes, please. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Okay? Please come, okay?
Okay, Chairperson, I just want to ask just a small question. Now that we're talking about the security of the country also, now I just want to check where do you feature in the Minister of State Security and Defense on the issues. Just to check, because I noticed that we are always talking about the Home Affairs Minister and leaving out the security cluster ministers.
BCOCC is a law that was passed by Parliament. It tells you which bodies that are involved in the border management. BCOCC. Defense does not come in there. It tells you of strictly the people that is a law that is passed by this Parliament that we're doing oversight on. Hence, these people are here today because they are controlled and commanded under the BCOCC run by the Department of Home Affairs. So you don't have to respond on that one. Okay.
No, thank you, Chairperson. In fact, mine was a request to clarify the position of the ANC on the unfortunate events that have happened earlier, but preferably after the responses.
Okay. But we said we'll engage on us alone to deal with the issues of what happened here in the House, the occurrence that happened here. We'll deal with it. That's fine. Hossein, we are wrapping up now. I know the way you're looking at me, you want the last one. Yes.
I don't have a question, but I want to avoid a situation where you make the closing comments and then we're done and then nothing comes out of it. So I just want to hear from you once we've concluded with the responses. Will we have a few minutes as the committee to just decide on the way forward? Or
no, well, I think what we'll do, we'll have what they call the part course for the guests that are here on issues that we expect from them. The rest of the issues that remain is with the state now. The rest of the issues, this is what we'll discuss moving forward. For now, what we'll require, because I'm now wrapping up the meeting, is that there are documents that we expect that the Fireblade must provide to Parliament. And these documents are simple. It's that copy of that agreement that we want that we did not get. You are in possession of that copy. You have to give us that copy within, today is Tuesday, by Friday, make sure that we receive the copy of that. Because that agreement is the one that tells us what is it that has been agreed upon by all parties, right? By all parties, okay? That's the first document that I would expect that we must receive it as Parliament. The rest of the documents that we have made mention of, the court orders and all of those documents are in the public domain. Now, the Parliament Committee and the Legal Service of Parliament has extracted a lot of these documents, so we don't need much from you when it comes to documentation, because even Honorable Hussein and all members that are here, you are in position. If you have even looked at the court order itself, we have analyzed it properly. Parliament has done that, and that document has been delivered to members. What we need will be that particular. What is required urgently from our side? Urgently from our side is to call the department and the Minister of Home Affairs. This is what is required urgently, because you have a situation here that a court order was issued in January. Court order that brings the activities of Fireblade to operate now. That's a court order. To date, you don't have an agreement with them. January to date, there's no written agreement, and the state is providing a service. There's no written agreement. And there's what we now call the 117,000 that is being paid, right? So what you're going to need here is that under your BCOCC is that engagement with the department, which is the leader of the BCOCC, right? For them to come in, give us the detail, and tell us when are they going to sign off that agreement, right? For me, this is what is important out of the engagement we've had today. Other than that, maybe if I were to give members of the committee, will be to assist the chair with your own comments of what we expect from the Fireblade. Because for me, I don't want even to appear to be wanting to argue the court order, right? Because the order has been given by the court. I don't want to appear to be arguing it and to want to put question against what. What I want to see from this committee will be how do we put this into operation? With proper agreement in place, and making sure that the state services that are provided are paid for. The state cannot provide a service to a private arrangement for free. Even your ordinary South Africans, when the police, we pay them salaries out of their taxes, the police make sure that we sleep in peace and all of that. Those who commit crime, they get arrested and all of that. We go to clinics, free healthcare, free education and all of that. That is from the taxpayers' money. So there must be accountability when we have to deal with the private arrangement, right? And I think the notion that we call it a family arrangement, it's not it's a private arrangement of a company called the Fireblade that the state provides the service to, right? So we want the state to be very clear around these issues. The rest of the work that must be done will be the gaps that we have identified, the issue of the policy, first of all, because it cannot be that we arrive at an agreement initiated based on our discussion. There must be a policy in place that guides such arrangements. Same applies with your Lanceria that has been identified today, that they provide such a service, and government officials goes there and provide. In fact, they are permanent there. If you go to Lanceria, you will get permanent immigration officers that are stationed there. The state is paying for those permanent people. Health people are there. SARS people are there in Lanceria, right? And the state is paying, and it's a private entity. It's not owned by the state, right? The company that is running Lanceria, it is a private, it's not a state-owned arrangement there. But the state is providing a service. So the issue of policy and legislation will have to be looked at, because the Department of Home Affairs, with the agreement that they are going to sign, must be based on a policy that is there. If there's no policy, then you can enter into some agreement. But for Parliament and Parliament's responsibility will be to make sure that there's legislation in place that governs such arrangement. Because we're going to have more of them, right? As we're dealing with this issue in the last engagement with the committee, we got information that other business people have a particular interest. One was already applying for a George Airport, right? And we know those people. It was reported here in the committee. Others were applying for the Cape Town Airport to have the portion of the Cape Town to be run private, right? And these are wealthy people who are there who can afford this thing. But the role of the state is to legislate, to make sure that you put in policy, right? Either you deny it or it becomes only that Fireblade arrangement that you have entered with at the OR Tambo Airport. Because these other people are going to challenge you too. Because they are going to have a particular interest. They already shown that they have a particular interest. They will come to the state, and the state cannot say, we can't do it, we can only do it for the Fireblade. Yeah? So it's important that we must engage with the leader of the BCOCC, who happen to be Home Affairs. That's what I think from the level of the committee we should do. All of these other issues, we have noted them. We are going to get clarity from the Department of Home Affairs. What informs the 117,000, right? The cost of the movement of SARS, of health, agriculture, all of these people, as they drive around 30 kilometers to go to the point around the airport, at the back of the airport there. Who pays for that, right? So these are things that we have to be taken into account. And who determined the 117,000? Can they give us a breakdown? What does it cover? We don't know. But the arrangement between yourself and them is that you can only afford to pay 117,000. I don't even want to ask you how much you are making there. It's your private issue there. What my interest is of this committee is the role of government and the government services that we provide there. Because I'll take it that whatever that you make there, you do pay your taxes as required by the law. And the point that is raised by Mam Kalipi that you are up to date with your taxes. Okay. So all of these things relate to what the state provide and the accountability, therefore. Parliament and its committees of parliament, every single cent of the state that gets spent by the state, it must be accounted for. And that accountability will get it from the Department of Home Affairs and those departments that are providing a service to Fireblade. I can't expect you now to say account on the monies that the government is spending for you. You can't. It's only the departments that must account. And therefore, Minister Malusi Gigaba, who is the head of the BCOC's Board and Management Committee, he is responsible to account to this committee on such activities. He is responsible to come back and share with us the issue of the agreement, because where we are sitting, it's not acceptable. That's the point I said earlier. We are not a banana republic where things can just be arranged there. Agreements must be in place for you to be able to operate. And we can't push you and say, give us the agreement, when the agreement is with the state. And the role of parliament is to call the Minister of Home Affairs and say, we are sitting with an agreement since from January or even before January. What is happening? Why are you not signing it? These are things that we must do as parliament. You can't have a situation where a private company, with good intention, the fact that you have identified this earlier and you decided that we are not making money, but as business model that we have, at some point we'll make a breakthrough and we'll not want to contest you. What we'll want to know is that the state money that is provided, the services that are provided are paid for and is agreed for, is accounted for. In the APP of the Department of Home Affairs, we don't have what you call the Fireblade services. It's not there. In the APP of Health Department, they don't have the services of Fireblade. Finance, everybody, they don't have that. But they are spending money as government to service Fireblade. Okay? So this is what I think the intention was. That is why the hearing today was more about a follow-up of a meeting that we have been to the Fireblade. We have observed exactly the activities that are happening there. And today was for you to confirm those activities. and the role of the Department of Home Affairs, meaning that government provides there. You may find that there are no agreement. We're just providing, right? So these are things that I believe that as Parliament, we have to abreast ourselves. We have to call those who are responsible to come and account to the committee. We have done it before. We're told that the minister is appealing the decision of the Supreme Court of Appeal. We have now learned that it's not true what we learned. It's something else that is appealing for, right? So these are things that I believe that Parliament still has an opportunity to invite the minister, to invite this department and any other department that wants to invite on this particular area of work. Any other department that is involved there, we have a right to do that as Parliament. Invite them to come and account and tell us how do they arrive at such arrangements and all of that. Okay? So for me, these are the points that I thought we should note as we move forward. And I've said that this is not the end of the engagement. It's clear that we still want to have more engagement with yourselves, together with the department and those that are responsible. At some point, we may want even to visit the airport again and meet with the entire echelon of the people who are there, and the levels of the people that take decisions there. At the level of the BCOCC, it's only meant for coordination. It's not meant to take decisions and make policy. It's not. It's only meant to coordinate at the points of entry. Policy is done at the highest level. At the level of the minister, the level of the director general of the department and Parliament. That's where the responsibility of policy making and policy formulation comes in. Now, at the lowest level there, you find people entering into some arrangement. What informs them to enter into those arrangements? Okay? So for me, colleagues, as I close this meeting, is to firstly appreciate you are coming to this portfolio committee meeting. That it was one of the easiest things to do to get you here. We never struggled, by the way. We wrote one letter. The following day, we got the response that you are ready to come and account. And for that, I want to applaud you and to thank you very much to have done that. And I don't want to make an example of other people who are still holding us at ransom, who do not want to come here. They want us to pay them business class ticket when they've stolen so much of the public money. Now, I want to thank you very much for that. But rest assured that as we thank you very much, issues that we have raised, issues that have been raised by members here, are issues that yourself, in fact, you must note them and look at how best you can then make this issue work better. Okay? We are not revising the court order. What we are simply saying to you is that there is a need, in fact, as Parliament, to make sure that the operations become proper and informed by a clear policy and clear agreements that must be in place. That's what we are saying to you, right? And on that note, we'll then engage with the Department of Home Affairs. We'll engage with the Minister of Home Affairs further, because we've already started to engage with him. We'll engage with him further to get clarity on these matters, but to push for a proper agreement that must be shared. And the draft document that we have, draft 2, Friday, we want that document here before the committee. Address it. We'll give you the address where you must send it. Friday, we want that draft watch on. On that note, I think that's where we're going to end now. We will then communicate with you if there's further engagement that is still required moving forward. Okay.
Chairman, thank you very much, and we appreciate the opportunity. Jonathan and I says we're passionate about aviation, and actually we bore people to death about Fireblade. So any opportunity to talk about Fireblade, we're there. And thank you for your guidance. I think on the question, just on the question of the payments and who pays.
No, don't go back.
No, I just want to say one.
No, I want you to do a vote of thanks too. Don't go to respond to questions. You're going to tempt members. These are members of Parliament. Yeah. They're not business. They're going to respond what you're going to say. So just deal with your vote of thanks. If anything to say.
Thank you, Chairman. Your advice is well taken.
Thank you very much. On that note, the meeting was then adjourned. Can we have? No, we're going to agree. Let's have a break for 5 minutes, members, just to allow the Fireblade directors to leave the meeting, and then we'll then come back to the program of the committee and deal with the issues that are before the committee. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the comment. Okay. Hey, skip generation show me the name. Exactly.
Whatever it is.
No, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. It was a good vision. I think it has managed to keep a lot of. Thank you very much.